Good morning, Indiana manufacturing leaders. If you're running an operation anywhere in this state, here are three things to keep an eye on over the next few months: layoffs in Bloomington, a refinery lockout in Whiting, and a new advanced manufacturing operation landing right here in Indiana. In Monroe County, Novo Nordisk is cutting 400 jobs at its Bloomington facility in early May. Up in Lake County, the lockout at BP's Whiting Refinery has dragged on for nearly a month during a contract standoff. And Guardian Bikes is building the first large scale bicycle frame manufacturing plant in the United States, right here in Indiana, trying to claw back production that's been offshore for years. In the next few minutes, I'll walk you through each of these stories and give you concrete questions you can put in front of your team today so you're fully prepared on hiring, fuel, and new customer opportunities. So let me give you one number to keep in your head today: 400. 400 is the number of jobs Novo Nordisk is cutting at its Bloomington facility in early May, which will remove a large chunk of annual wages from the Monroe County economy and put hundreds of skilled manufacturing workers back on the market at the same time. For Indiana manufacturers, that means two things: local businesses that depend on the wage base will feel it, and you suddenly have a pool of highly trained talent available if you're prepared to hire with intention. If we use the Bloomington Economic Development Corp's benchmark of about $70,000 per year for pharmaceutical manufacturing jobs in that county, 400 roles comes out to roughly $28 million in wages per year that will no longer flow through that community. That changes what local suppliers see and demand and what your competitors can do with hiring offers. So this week, one simple check is: do we have a clear written plan for how we would take advantage of a large, sudden pool of experienced workers in our region without overextending our labor cost structure? That's a good question. Now, if your operation relies on refined fuels anywhere in Indiana, a month-long lockout at BP's Whiting Refinery should be on your radar. United Steelworkers have been locked out of BP's Whiting Refinery for nearly 1 month in the middle of contract negotiations. BP says the two sides last met on March 17th and that the union has not responded or offered dates to resume talks. The union says they did send letters and tried to get back to the table, and that BP ignored them for weeks. The company's current offer includes a staffing reduction of about 65 employees and a voluntary option for about 40 additional craft employees to leave with lump sum payments, while the union claims BP is demanding the elimination of more than 100 local jobs and wage cuts at the Whiting Refinery before lifting the lockout. BP is telling the public that there are no base wage cuts in their offer, but that some job classifications would go away, meaning people could lose pay premiums they receive on top of base pay. They're also saying affected employees would receive lump sums, in some cases up to $10,000, and could potentially return to the site through third-party contractors. The union, for its part, is calling this bad faith bargaining and highlighting outside job postings they say are recruiting experienced Gulf Coast refinery workers for short-term work in Whiting. For operators in Indiana, I'm not here to tell you who's right or wrong in this dispute. My audience probably has more to tell me about union dynamics than I can tell you. What I will say is that anytime you see a stalemate like this at a major refinery, it highlights just how many different angles can disrupt supply chains that you take for granted, including the fuel and feedstocks that keep your operation running. So watch for any announcements about resumed negotiations and pay attention to credible reporting on the refinery's actual operating status while the lockout continues. A practical question for your team is: what are our contingency plans for energy supply and pricing if disruptions at critical regional facilities like the Whiting Refinery become prolonged or more frequent? That means knowing which suppliers you would call, how fast you can switch contracts, and what price triggers would force you to replan production. So if you care about where the next wave of advanced manufacturing growth lands, Guardian Bikes choosing Indiana for the first large-scale U.S. bicycle frame plant should get your attention at a time when about 97% of all bicycles sold in this country are imported. The company plans to power the factory with robotic welders, advanced laser cutting, and vertically integrated logistics using high quality domestic steel and aluminum to produce kids' bikes with prices starting around $149. That's pretty good. This is part of a wider reshoring push. Indiana has lost more than 150,000 skilled manufacturing jobs since 2000, and the article points out how years of underpriced imports and foreign subsidies have hollowed out domestic metal fabrication and similar industries. Guardian already employs about 200 people, with distribution centers in California, Pennsylvania, and Indiana, and plans for more in Texas and Florida. Their stated goal is made in the USA, which means building a full scale domestic bicycle supply chain from the handlebars to wheel hubs, anchored in the Midwest. The emergence of one new manufacturing company on its own is not going to rescue every community, but as industry and demand grow broadly, it is incredibly important for each individual company to implement a forward looking energy supply chain management process. It is no longer sufficient to assume that the utility market broadly will provide that type of service. And frankly, it never really has. So watch Guardian's progress on construction and, more importantly, pay attention to their sourcing needs as they look for domestic suppliers. The question to bring to your team is, how can our company identify and pursue opportunities to supply or partner with new domestic manufacturing operations, especially those using advanced production techniques and reshoring into Indiana? That might mean metals components, packaging, or services. Today, you are staring at three forces at the same time: a major employer in Bloomington cutting jobs, a crucial refinery in Lake County tied up in a labor dispute, and a growth story where a manufacturer is betting on Indiana for advanced production and a domestic supply chain. Taken together, they say this: workforce stability is not guaranteed, even in hot industries. Critical inputs like fuel can be interrupted for reasons far outside of your operation. And Indiana is still attractive for companies willing to invest in automation and regional sourcing. The same state that is watching tens of millions of dollars in wages come off the books in Monroe County is also attracting capital to rebuild production that left the United States years ago. The bottom line today is you cannot assume that your current workforce, your current fuel supply, or your current customer base will stay static. But you can prepare by building clear hiring plans, contingency plans for energy supply, and a short list of new manufacturers you want to serve as they expand in Indiana. Now, obviously, I don't run your plant. You do that. My real job as CEO of Tactical Energy Group is to stay on top of everything that changes the cost and reliability of your power and the economics of making things in Indiana so that I can build the right products and programs for the manufacturing community. But while I'm doing that work anyway, this brief is my way of giving you as much of that insight as I possibly can so you can spend more time running your operation and less time trying to decode bills, rate cases, and headlines. So let me give you a few questions you can take straight into your morning huddle today. If you cannot answer these clearly, then you don't have a solid view of how workforce decisions, labor disputes, and reshoring bets are going to show up in your hiring plan, your fuel budget, and your future revenue. So the first question is this: how are we proactively analyzing market competition and patent expiration risks for our key products? And what specific contingency plans do we have to avoid a scenario where layoffs are the only lever left? The second question: what are our energy contingency plans for energy supply and pricing if disruptions at critical regional facilities like BP's Whiting Refinery become prolonged or more frequent? And who owns that plan on our team? Third question: where specifically could we plug into Guardian Bike's planned Indiana frame plant or similar reshoring projects as a supplier? And who is responsible for tracking those opportunities and starting those conversations? Fourth question: given 400 skilled workers being cut in Bloomington, do we have a clear strategy for it and for if and when we should try to recruit from that talent pool? And how would we onboard them without damaging our current culture or cost structure? Now, if this helped you see today's news a little bit more clearly, send it to another Indiana operator who should be ahead of these stories instead of reacting after the fact. And if you want deeper tools on energy, rate design, and how to manage the cost and reliability of your power over the next decade, you can always find them at tacticalenergygroup.com. I'm Daniel Burke. This is TEG Daily, and I will see you tomorrow morning.